They laughed at him before he even stepped into the conference room. The glass doors to the 42nd floor boardroom slid open with a cold whisper. And Jordan Cole, black hoodie, worn sneakers, backpack slung over one shoulder, walked into a space that wasn't built for men who looked like him. The air smelled like polished wood, expensive cologne, and quiet judgment. Executives in suits worth more than his annual rent turned and stared. Not stared. Assessed. Dismissed. One man, silver hair slicked back like a villain from an old movie, leaned toward his colleague and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Who let its support into a multi-billion-dollar pitch meeting?" Snickers. Side-eyed smirks. Someone whispered, "He must be lost." Jordan kept walking. He didn't flinch, didn't slow, didn't let the heat crawling up the back of his neck show on his face. His heart pounded, but he forced his breathing to stay steady the way he'd practiced in countless mirror pep talks. Half the room watched him like he was a janitor who wandered in by mistake. The other half watched him like entertainment. He placed his backpack on a chair near the corner, out of the way, so no one could accuse him of taking up space. He had learned that trick early. The CEO, Mr. Langford, finally looked up from his tablet. "Can we help you?" That tone, that condescending, amused, just barely patient tone. Jordan swallowed. "I'm here for the pitch session. I scheduled—" "Oh," Langford interrupted with a smirk. "You're the developer who requested 10 minutes? I assumed—" "Someone else." Someone else. Someone whiter. Someone older. Someone with a Rolex and a trust fund. Jordan lifted his chin an inch. "Yes, sir. I'm Jordan Cole." A woman in a tailored navy suit raised an eyebrow, lips curling. "And what exactly do you plan to pitch? A new Wi-Fi password?" Laughter exploded. Jordan stood still as heat sank into his chest, spreading slow and sharp. He had been underestimated his entire life. But somehow, in this cold, glass-walled boardroom 42 stories above the city, their mockery hit different. More public, more humiliating, more designed to put him in his place before he even opened his laptop. But let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room where every pair of eyes decided your worth before your mouth even opened? Where your skin spoke louder than your resume? Where your clothes became your qualifications? Where your presence offended people who thought the world belonged to them? This wasn't just a high-status environment. This was a fortress of wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a skyline dotted with buildings owned by the people in this room. Every chair was custom leather. Every watch cost at least $15,000. The water bottles had air-imported mineral labels. The coffee machine in the corner cost more than Jordan's old car. These people weren't just rich. They were insulated, untouchable, and absolutely certain they were smarter than whoever walked in wearing sneakers from an outlet mall. The oppressor, because that's what he was, let's not pretend, stood at the head of the table. Grant Langford, CEO of Titan Global Holdings. Billionaire, old money, educated at schools where tuition cost more than houses. A man who treated the world like a chessboard and everyone else like pawns. He tapped his pen impatiently. "Let's make this quick," he said. "We have real business to attend to." His colleagues smirked. Jordan inhaled slowly. Real business. As if he weren't holding an idea in his backpack, a fully coded prototype that could change the entire data security industry. An app no one had taken seriously because it came from someone who didn't fit the mold of visionary tech founder. He cleared his throat. "Thank you for your time. My app? App?" Langford cut in with a grin. "Apps don't make money anymore, unless you're the next Zuckerberg." Another executive snorted. "He doesn't look like Zuckerberg." Jordan held his ground. It uses a predictive security algorithm. Uh-huh, Langford said, already uninterested. Jordan tried again. It automatically identifies data breaches. Right, said the woman in navy. Like every other failed cybersecurity startup. He gripped the edge of his laptop, nails pressing into the metal. They hadn't even seen it. They hadn't asked a single question. They weren't rejecting the technology. They were rejecting him. Jordan Cole, black, from the east side. The son of a mother who worked double shifts at a hospital and a father he barely remembered. A self-taught programmer who learned to code from library books and outdated laptops from yard sales. A man who had to fight for internet access, let alone investors. He didn't come from Stanford or MIT. He came from survival. His backstory wasn't a glossy tech magazine interview. It was nights sleeping 3 hours because he had to help his mother with bills and clutch his baby sister during thunderstorms when the power went out. It was repairing broken appliances for neighbors because coding wasn't a real job. It was being told he wasn't smart enough, good enough, or white enough to ever work in Silicon Valley. Yet he built things anyway. He built because no one built for people like him. He built because the world didn't hand him solutions. He built because he saw patterns, complex ones, like they were printed in neon ink across the sky. At 14, he cracked a school firewall accidentally, and then fixed it because the staff couldn't figure out how. At 16, he built a scheduling app to help his mom juggle hospital shifts. At 19, he coded his first encryption tool, stronger than half the commercial products on the market. And now, he was about to show these executives something they didn't deserve to see. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. Because before he could even touch his laptop, the boardroom screens flickered, then glitched, then went black. Every executive sat up straight. What the hell? Langford barked. A notification flashed across the screen. Unauthorized access detected. Data breach level 4. Panic flooded the room like cold water rushing downward. Executives scrambled. People grabbed phones. Someone shouted, "Get it up here." Another yelled, "Shut the servers." The woman in navy muttered, "This cannot be happening during Investor Week." The CEO slammed his hand on the table. Fix it now. But their in-house tech team wasn't here. Their senior engineer was on medical leave. Their security director was across the country. And within seconds, every screen in the room displayed the same message. Data compromised, breach spreading. The board erupted in chaos. Jordan watched them panic, watched them drown in their own arrogance, watched them scramble with no idea what to do. And that's when he realized. This was the moment the world had been holding its breath for. He stepped forward quietly. "I can fix it." The room fell silent, like someone pressed mute on their fear. Langford turned slowly. "You?" he said, almost laughing. "You think you can fix a breach threatening a multi-billion-dollar company?" Jordan opened his laptop without a word. "I don't think," he said. "I know." No one in that room breathed. The billionaire CEO stared at Jordan like he'd just claimed he could fly. Executives exchanged looks of disbelief, amusement, and thinly veiled contempt. The woman in navy scoffed. "This is not the time for experiments. We need a real engineer." "Call the cybersecurity team," another shouted. "Call anyone." "They're 45 minutes away," a man near the window said, voice shaking. "By then the breach will hit the investor archive." Langford turned red. "Someone shut him up and shut this down." Jordan ignored them all. He typed, fast, flawlessly, like the keyboard was an extension of his hands and the code was music only he could hear. The executives slowly fell silent, not because they trusted him, but because they couldn't look away. His screen reflected in his eyes strings of code, system maps, breach indicators, predictive models, and something else. Something none of them recognized. A small symbol in the corner, a blue icon, a prototype, his prototype. Jordan's voice was calm. Your breach isn't random. It's a system-probing worm replicating through unsecured API endpoints. The firewall flagged it too late. The woman in navy blinked. How do you know that? He didn't look up. Because your breach pattern is predictable. Predictable? Langford barked. Breaches aren't predictable. Jordan tapped a key. Every boardroom screen lit up. Executives gasped. Because displayed across all of them was a real-time 3D visualization of the breach. Mapped, analyzed, projected, and decoded in seconds. Your system logs aren't synchronized, Jordan said. Your data ingestion layer is outdated, and your API gateway is missing a patch from 18 months ago. The room fell into stunned silence. He continued typing. And the worm isn't actually inside your core data yet. It's circling, testing, waiting for a file sync cycle to latch onto. How on earth? One executive whispered. Jordan finally looked up. Because I built something that predicts breach behavior. He tapped one final key. The blue icon expanded across the boardroom screens. Gasps. Stunned silence. A few executives leaned forward with their mouths open. What is that? Langford asked, voice barely audible. Jordan's heart pounded. My app. The room froze. He stood tall, not shrinking, not apologizing. It's called Sentry, he said. It uses predictive modeling to identify cyberattacks before they happen, and it works in real time. You're saying, the woman in navy whispered, you already knew how this worm works? Jordan nodded. I wrote an algorithm that anticipates this exact attack pattern, and I can neutralize it. Langford looked like he might explode. This is impossible. If something like this existed, we'd already own it. Jordan's lips twitched. You don't. I do. Executives stared at the boardroom screens as Jordan's app scanned the breach, mapped its trajectory, isolated its access points, and recommended countermeasures, all in seconds. Someone whispered, Holy... Another said, This is revolutionary. Langford was trembling with rage, envy, and fear. Jordan wasn't done. He typed in one more command, a patch override that activated through the Sentry interface. The breach indicators flickered, then dimmed, then disappeared, all at once. Every screen displayed. Breach neutralized then. System secured silence. Deep, heavy, awestruck silence. The kind of silence that happens when a room full of people realizes they just witnessed something historic. A breath finally escaped someone's lips like a prayer. He fixed it. In minutes. I've never seen anything like it. The woman in navy leaned forward, whispering in disbelief. That was genius. Jordan closed his laptop gently. You were about 3 minutes from losing everything, he said, voice steady. Investor data, contracts, compliance reports, gone. He lifted his backpack. You're welcome. Langford snapped out of his trance. Where are you going? Jordan raised an eyebrow. You said, let's make this quick. So, I did. He turned toward the door. Wait, a board member shouted. You're not leaving. Jordan paused. Langford swallowed, pride bleeding into desperation. Sit down. You and I need to discuss ownership rights, licensing, technology transfer. Jordan turned slowly, eyes steady. You mocked me before I spoke a word. I offered you a meeting. You insulted me. You dismissed me. Langford stepped forward. You can't walk out. I can make you very rich. Jordan tilted his head. You think money is the problem? The room stilled. Jordan approached the table. Not timidly, not cautiously, but with the confidence of a man carrying something more valuable than the wealth around him. You didn't take me seriously because I didn't look like you imagined a genius should look, because I didn't come in wearing a suit, because I'm young and black and from the East Side, because I don't sound like the developers you're used to exploiting. Langford stiffened. You should watch your tone. No, Jordan said. You should watch how you treat people. He placed his prototype box on the table. Then he opened it. Inside was a sleek device, Sentry's hardware companion, the one he never planned to show today, but fate clearly had other ideas. Executives leaned in. What's that? Someone whispered. Jordan smiled slightly. Version 1, he said. The hardware that turns the app into a full predictive cybersecurity system. Langford's eyes widened. This is a billion-dollar idea. Jordan held his gaze. My idea. He turned to leave again, but the woman in navy, who had mocked him earlier, jumped up. Jordan, she said, voice trembling, please, you can't walk out without talking to us. He faced her. I can, he said simply, because I don't need you. A long silence. She swallowed. What do you want? Jordan looked around the room. Executives waited with bated breath, because they knew the truth now. They weren't holding the power anymore. He was. Jordan stepped closer. What I want, he said slowly, is everything you tried to deny me. Langford clenched his jaw. Name it. Jordan leaned forward. You're going to invest in my company, not own it. Invest. Executives exchanged shocked glances. You'll sign a partnership agreement, Jordan continued. Not a buyout, not a majority stake, a partnership. He paused. And I keep the IP. Someone choked on air. He keeps the IP. That's impossible. Another protested. Jordan smiled. Is it? The board fell silent. Langford stared at him with wide eyes and a tightening jaw. Why? He whispered. Should we agree to that? Jordan nodded toward the screens. Because without me, your company would have collapsed 10 minutes ago. No one argued. Because no one could. And that's when the shift happened. The oppressor, red-faced, trembling, furious, realized the truth. The man he mocked. The man he underestimated. The man he tried to dismiss. Had just saved his empire and built something far greater than theirs. The boardroom didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like a courtroom. And Jordan was the judge. Executives shifted in their seats, adjusting their suits, their watches, their pride. Fear crept into their polished faces, the kind that only comes when the power dynamic has flipped so fast it leaves the air vibrating. Langford gripped the back of his chair, knuckles white. You're out of your depth, he snapped, though the edge in his voice cracked under pressure. Tech partnerships require legal teams, financial evaluations, background checks. Jordan raised a hand. Your lawyers will get my terms tonight, he said calmly, and you'll accept them, because you know what I built is worth 10 times what your company is. A low gasp rippled around the room. And, he added, because your data system is still exposed. My app patched this attack, but it didn't fix the architectural flaws. You need Sentry, or the next breach will destroy you. The woman in navy swallowed hard. We'll negotiate. Jordan shook his head. No, I didn't come here for negotiation. I came here out of courtesy. You all lost your chance to negotiate the moment you laughed at me when I walked in. Silence. Langford's jaw flexed repeatedly, like he was chewing rage. But behind the fury was something else. Fear. Raw, undisguised, humiliating fear. All right, he said through clenched teeth. What are your terms? Jordan stepped forward, palms resting lightly on the table. 1. I maintain 100% ownership of the app. All IP is mine. Executive stiffened. 2. You invest $50 million for a minority equity stake in my new security company, Sentry Labs. A few board members inhaled sharply. 3. I lead the architecture. No interference. And 4. He paused, letting the silence coil tight. You issue a public apology. The whole table choked. What? Langford sputtered. A public apology, Jordan repeated. For dismissing me. For disrespecting me. For nearly costing your investors everything because you couldn't see past your own arrogance. The woman in navy looked down at her hands. One board member muttered, He's right. Another whispered, We'd be bankrupt right now without him. Langford's fury ignited. You're asking for humiliation. Jordan stepped closer. No, he said. I'm asking for accountability. The room fell still again. It was the kind of stillness that happens when pride fights reality and loses. Langford finally spoke, voice deadened by defeat. You'll have your apology, he said. Jordan nodded once. The balance of power had shifted permanently. They weren't doing him a favor. He was giving them a lifeline. He turned to leave, but the woman in navy rose suddenly. Jordan, wait. He paused. She approached him slowly, hands trembling. This was the woman who mocked him earlier, who saw only a hoodie, not a mind. Only skin, not skill. Only stereotype, not genius. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry for what I said, for how I treated you. I was wrong. Jordan didn't smile, but he didn't turn away. Thank you, he said quietly. Just see better next time. She nodded, ashamed. As Jordan reached the door, security stepped aside, not because they were told to, but because they saw what everyone else saw. This man wasn't leaving as the person who walked in. He wasn't the IT guy. He wasn't the black techie who got lucky. He wasn't the kid with a hoodie they brushed aside. He was the genius who saved them all. And they knew it. As Jordan walked into the hallway, his phone buzzed endlessly. Emails from investors who had heard whispers of the breach. Messages from executives begging for meetings. Alerts from people who had dismissed him hours earlier, but were suddenly desperate to get close. He ignored them all. He took the elevator down to the lobby. 42 floors of quiet triumph. When the doors opened, sunlight poured in through the glass atrium, bathing him in gold. Outside, waiting at the curb, was an avalanche of news vans. The story had leaked. Titan Global suffers near catastrophic breach, saved by independent developer. Unknown genius halts cyberattack in minutes. Who is Jordan Cole? Microphones pointed toward the entrance. Cameras blazed, reporters surged. And just as Jordan stepped onto the pavement, the boardroom doors above opened, and Grant Langford, the billionaire CEO, walked forward to the glass balcony overlooking the reporters. The crowd roared questions. Mr. Langford, is it true your systems were breached? Did your team fail to prevent the attack? Who is the young man who saved the company? Langford swallowed, so hard the movement was visible, even from below. Then he leaned into the microphone. His name, the CEO said, is Jordan Cole. And today, he saved Titan Global. The reporters went wild. Langford's next words were even louder, echoing through the courtyard, past the cameras, past the crowd, straight into the moment that would define both their futures. "We owe him our survival," he said. "We should have listened. We should have respected him. We should have seen him." A hush fell. Langford exhaled. "I apologize publicly for failing to recognize his genius." And then, in front of hundreds of cameras, he said something that had never once crossed his lips for anyone beneath him. "I'm sorry, Jordan." Jordan stood still, the world's noise softening around him. People looked at him with awe, some with guilt, some with admiration, all with recognition they hadn't shown hours earlier. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He simply nodded once. Then he walked away as reporters shouted his name. Not the name of a nobody. Not the name of an underestimated kid. His real name, Jordan Cole, founder of Sentry Labs, the man who would change cybersecurity forever, the man who wouldn't be invisible anymore. Weeks later, the partnership deal was signed. News articles called Sentry the next trillion-dollar disruptor. Investors flooded his inbox. Tech conferences begged him to speak. His mother framed every headline. And Jordan? He kept building, kept coding, kept dreaming. Because he wasn't doing any of this for revenge. He was doing it for the kids who grew up like him, kids who were told they didn't belong in rooms full of power, brilliance, or possibility. Kids who looked like him, kids the world underestimated. And here's the truth the world needs to hear. Genius doesn't come wrapped in a suit. Innovation doesn't require a trust fund. Brilliance doesn't always shout. Sometimes it walks into a boardroom in sneakers, gets laughed at by billionaires, then saves their empire and builds its own. So the next time you're tempted to judge someone by how they look, or where they come from, or how quietly they carry themselves, remember Jordan Cole. Because the people the world underestimates the most are often the ones who rise the highest. And when they rise, they don't just enter the future, they build it.